Hey guys, my name is Matsumiyo, and welcome to your episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question for today is, do you think that Lion and Finka are overpowered? Well, first of all, we have to remember that this happens every single time a new DLC releases. Everyone claims the new operators are overpowered, and while that does hold true sometimes, we had Blackbeard and Ella, for example, a lot of the times, it's just simply because we don't know how to play against them, and it's just our knee-jerk reaction. Remember Dokkaebi? When she first came out, everyone thought that she was going to make Valkyrie obsolete. They thought that no roamer would be safe, offense would always know where they are because she could just simply call them on their phone, and it was going to be a nightmare to deal with. And while she is still a strong operator, I think most of us would agree that she's nowhere near overpowered. And so with all that being said, it's hard to say with Lion and Finka. One criticism I've been hearing a lot with Lion lately is that he requires no skill whatsoever. With a push of the button, you give everyone on your team wall hacks, and it's basically an I win button. And while that might be true in a select few situations, a lot of times I find that Lion is really only going to be useful to find roamers and a well-coordinated team. If you just activate his gadget whenever you want and you're expecting it to give everyone on your team wall hacks and free kills, like, you're gonna be in for a rude awakening. Like, if you'd have no pressure on the objective, he's gonna do absolutely nothing with his gadgets. Now, I will admit that he is really good at taking care of roamers. If you drone someone out, or if you have a Jackal on your team, you scan them with the Jackal, you figure out where they're heading, and then as soon as you kind of get near, you activate Lion's ability, and that roamer then has to make the decision. Am I gonna stand in one place, letting the Jackal scan ping my location, or am I going to move around and have the entire enemy team know exactly where I am because of the Lion scan? That is going to be something that people are going to have to work around. Now, the thing about that is, though, is that requires two operators to pull off that maneuver. And this also might be Ubisoft's way to try to lessen the prevalence of roaming right now in Rainbow Six Siege. Now, as for Finka, though, that is where I can see more of this criticism. All you have to do as her is activate her gadget really quickly, and then everyone on your team gets a global buff, and now all of you are better. The same thing with Lion, though, is that if no one's in a position to take advantage of that buff, well then, did it really matter? On top of that, they don't really have the best secondary gadgets. I believe they have like a Claymore, a Flash Nade, and breaching charges. Those are decent. Flashbangs can be quite beneficial, but they have no way of dealing with barbed wire. They don't have any nades. They don't have smoke nades, which are incredibly powerful in Rainbow Six Siege, and so that's also another drawback. And so I think we just kind of have to wait a couple of weeks to really get a good understanding of how these two operators are going to be changing up the meta. They might be overpowered. Like, I honestly do not know right now because I can't tell the future. I don't know how people are going to react to this and the strategies that are going to evolve around these operators. I can almost guarantee you that people are going to find a specific use for Lion and certain strategies that we haven't seen right now, or it's not, in wide use. When those strategies come up, maybe, yeah, they are too good and Ubisoft needs to go on in and make some adjustments. But the fact that we've had this discussion before with past operators like Dokkaebi, I feel like it might just be growing pains. People have this knee-jerk reaction like, wow, this is so different, it feels crazy. But once people settle on in, they get adjusted to the new meta, they'll have their place, they'll be strong, but they won't be overpowered. But of course, only time will tell. The next question is, do you think that Blitz even needed a buff in Rainbow Six Siege? So I do realize where Ubisoft is coming from on this one. They realize that even after giving him the sprint mechanic, that he still had a very low pick rate compared to a lot of the other operators, and so they wanted to make him more appealing. The thing is, though, is that I don't think that that is the best indication that someone deserves to have a buff. So I don't think they mentioned it, but the real question I have is, what was his win-loss ratio for the people that do play as Blitz? Yeah, he might have a low pick rate, but that could be due for a lot of reasons, not because he's terrible, but because maybe people just don't like playing as shield operators in Rainbow Six Siege. Personally, I just don't like the playstyle. I find it to be clunky, I don't understand when to use shields properly, and so I just don't play as Blitz or Monty, for example. That's not necessarily because I think they're terrible, it's just because I don't like that playstyle. Maybe that's the reason why they have a low pick rate. Now, I do have to commend them for trying to make him more interesting. If his pick rate was that low and no one was playing as Blitz, then yeah, I do agree that something needs to be done. If you have 100 operators to choose from, but only 20 of them are viable and fun to play as, well, then what's the point of having the other 80? Like, you need to make sure that every single operator in this game is fun to use, because that just adds in more variety. What's the solution to that, though? Do they just give him a flat-out buff like they're attempting right now in the test server? Or do they try to rework his kit in some fashion that isn't necessarily a buff, but actually changes the way that Blitz performs? I don't really know. Personally, I don't think that Blitz needed an upgrade other than just allowing him the ability to sprint. That gave him a lot more presence on the map, he could be a lot more aggressive, and just made him much more versatile. Sure, he still had weaknesses, but every operator needs a weakness. As soon as you give, someone the ability to charge into someone's face, flash them, it's GG at that point. One argument that I've heard people make is, well, just flank the Blitz with 2 operators. If you need 2 operators to take out one, I feel like that from a gameplay design is a bit unbalanced to begin with. Like, every operator in this game should be able, as long as they play it correctly, or at least somewhat correctly, to come out on top. You might be at a disadvantage, but it shouldn't just be practically a free win for that Blitz player, and that's what it was a couple of days ago. And so, at least for me, I like that Ubisoft is trying to change things up. I mean, this is exactly what the technical test servers are all about. They're going to be making these changes, and that's good. We get to give our feedback before they go live and things are completely busted. I just don't necessarily think that Blitz right now did need a buff, but of course that is just my 2 cents. The next question comes from Holden, and it is, what if when Vigil has his mask on, Lion's drone in the sky can't detect him while he is moving around just like an actual drone? I feel like this would be a good counter because there is no direct counter to him right now. I was very surprised when they made the announcement that Vigil wasn't going to be a direct counter to him, because it feels like the perfect fit. It fits his background, it fits kind of his playstyle. Why not have a direct counter with Vigil? Vigil by himself, I don't think is incredible. Like, I think he's good. I think he's a strong operator in the right hands. Like, he can be challenging to deal with, but I definitely don't think that he's overpowered, and to give him this little quirk that he also counters Lion doesn't seem completely out of the realm of possibility. The only things I can think of for why they never did this is that either they play tested it, realized that Vigil was too strong against Lion, or maybe they just didn't want to start to introduce hard counters like this in Rainbow Six Siege. Some operators do counter others, like that's a simple fact of life, but a lot of times it's not just you activate an ability and all of a sudden you completely counter someone else. There's a lot of other dynamics going on. If you have a bandit, for example, well, then they can just bring in a Twitch or a Thatcher. But if you play it properly, you can avoid those gadgets. You can actually outplay them. If you have an Ashe, for example, it can be countered by a Jaeger, but if you throw in a bunch of flash nades before that, you can then get your breaching charge into the room to take care of the barbed wire. Like, there's a lot of different dynamics. But for Vigil, all he would need to do is activate his gadget, and now he's immune to Lion. There's nothing going on between offense and defense. It's just a straight hard counter. And so maybe that's something that Ubisoft is trying to avoid. And so while I do agree with you, I think that he should be a direct counter because that would increase his pick rate, make him a bit more viable. Those are the reasons why I think maybe Ubisoft didn't go that direction. The next question comes from Nick, and it is, how would you feel about an operator that could dash through barricaded doors and windows? I feel like we discussed a similar idea like this in the past, but instead of it being just a normal operator that can charge through barricades, it was a shield operator. I'm sure you guys have seen the iconic picture of Rainbow Six Siege where you have the offensive team behind a shield who looks like he's just charging through a barricade. Like, that sounds really cool conceptually. The thing is, though, is that I don't know how much utility this would bring to your team. Yeah, charging on through would be awesome the first couple of times, and you might be able to catch a couple people by surprise, but a lot of the times, people aren't barricading doors. Like, unless it's the outside of the building, most people aren't barricading between you and the objective, and so is this really going to do a whole lot? Now, if it was just a normal operator that could rappel on the outside of a window without breaking anything, they're not making any noise, and all of a sudden they can just jump back and rappel through that barricade, that could actually be a bit more viable. Like, I always love to do the breaching charge tactic where I put a breaching charge on a window and then rappel on back and then go on in. But the thing is, though, is that makes a lot of noise. Most people are gonna look in that direction and either know that I opened up the window or that I went in through said window. And so if there was someone that could stealthily go through those windows, that might make it easier for you to get those surprise kill off on the enemy. That could be a bit more viable. Once again though, I don't know if that's a good enough gadget or unique ability to warrant to have someone on offense to play as that character. I mean, maybe I'm not looking at this properly. Maybe there would be some awesome strategies that people would be able to create around it, but I just don't think that's good enough. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's episode of Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Do you think that Blitz needs a buff? Do you think that he's in a good place right now? Let me know down below in the comment section. As always, if you would like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.